Ever wonder why you're here, thinking about this? I mean, really thinking. Not just I'm hungry or I'm tired, but thinking about the past, the future, and your place in it all. Our brain is the reason. It's a 3 pound lump of fat and electricity inside our skull. But it can imagine galaxies, write poetry, and build computers. No other animal comes close. The weird part is how quickly it seems to have happened. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old. Life has been around for almost 4 billion of those years. Dinosaurs roamed for 150 million years with brains the size of a walnut. Then, in what amounts to a geological blink of an eye, our ancestors went from having typical ape brains to having these supercomputers we carry around today. It seems like it happened overnight. For billions of years, nothing. Then, bam, us. How did that happen? What lit the fuse? It wasn't one thing. There was no single magic moment, no bolt of lightning from the heavens. It was more like a series of lucky breaks and feedback loops. One change created the opportunity for another change, which in turn amplified the first one. It was a snowball effect that rolled for a few million years, getting bigger and faster until it created the modern human mind. To understand it, we have to go back, not just to the first humans, but to the world that set the stage for them. Let's go back about 66 million years. The dinosaurs just had a very bad day. An asteroid hit the planet and changed the rules of the game. Big, cold-blooded reptiles were out. Small, warm-blooded mammals were in. Being warm-blooded is a big deal. It means you can be active at night or in the cold. But it comes at a huge cost. It takes a ton of energy, a ton of calories to keep your body warm. This puts constant pressure on you to be smart about finding food. You need a decent brain just to manage your body's furnace and find the fuel for it. So, right from the start, our distant mammal ancestors had a slight evolutionary push toward bigger, better brains compared to the reptiles they replaced. Now, fast forward to our more recent relatives, the primates. They lived in trees. The life in the trees is complex. It's a three-dimensional world. You need good eyesight with depth perception to judge the distance between branches. You need grasping hands to hold on. This is why you have forward-facing eyes and not eyes on the side of your head like a horse. Your primate ancestors needed to see in 3D to not fall to their death. They also needed brains that could process all that visual information and coordinate those nimble hands. This was another small step up. The basic hardware for a better brain was already being installed. But these were still just smart animals, nothing close to a human. The real story begins when one of these apes did something crazy. It stood up and walked on 2 legs. This is maybe the most important single event in our entire history. We call it bipedalism. It happened somewhere around 6 million years ago in Africa. The climate was changing, the dense forests were shrinking and being replaced by open savanna. For an ape living in the trees, this was a disaster. But for one that could walk efficiently on the ground between patches of trees, it was an opportunity. Walking on 2 legs changed everything. First, it freed the hands. An animal that walks on all fours needs its hands for locomotion. An animal that walks on 2 legs doesn't. Its hands are now free 24/7 to do other things. They can carry food, they can carry babies, and most importantly, they can carry and use tools. The hand, with its amazing opposable thumb, was now available for full-time duty. It was a solution waiting for a problem. Second, walking on 2 legs is incredibly energy efficient. If you're a chimp, walking on 2 legs for a long distance is awkward and tiring. But a human body is built for it. We have long legs, an S-shaped spine, and arched feet that act like springs. We are the best long-distance walkers in the animal kingdom. This was a huge advantage on the open savanna. It meant our ancestors could travel farther to find food without burning as many calories. Those saved calories could be used for other things, like, for instance, feeding a growing brain. So now we have an ape that walks upright, has free hands, and saves energy while moving. This was our ancestor, something like an Australopithecus. Lucy was a famous one. Her brain was still pretty small, only a little bigger than a modern chimpanzee's. She wasn't human, but the foundation was laid. She was a tool user in waiting. And the stage was set for the first real explosion in brain size. That explosion came with a new character on the scene, Homo habilis, the handyman. Around 2.5 million years ago, some of these upright apes started doing something new. They started chipping rocks to make sharp edges. These weren't fancy tools. They were simple choppers and flakes. But they were revolutionary. Think about it. Before tools, you could only eat what you could kill with your bare hands or what you could chew through. That mostly means plants, fruits, and maybe some small lizards, but with a sharp stone tool, your menu suddenly expands. You can now slice meat off a carcass, you can scrape flesh from a hide. Even more importantly, you can smash open a bone to get at the rich, fatty marrow inside. Meat and marrow are calorie bombs. They are packed with the fat and protein needed to build and run a bigger brain. This is where the first major feedback loop kicks in. It goes like this: an ape with a slightly bigger brain is better at making a simple tool. That tool gives it access to high-energy food like meat and marrow. That high-energy food provides the fuel for a bigger brain to grow, both over an individual's lifetime and over evolutionary generations. A bigger brain can then figure out how to make an even better tool, which gives it access to even more food, which fuels an even bigger brain. This is the cycle that started everything. It's called the expensive tissue hypothesis. The idea is that brains are incredibly expensive organs. Your brain is only about 2% of your body weight, but it uses about 20% of your daily calories. You can't afford a big brain unless you have a rich, reliable source of high-quality food. The invention of stone tools provided that source. Our ancestors started to shift their diet, becoming more and more reliant on meat. This shift in diet had another surprising consequence. As our ancestors ate more easily digestible food like meat, they didn't need a huge gut to process tough plant fibers anymore. The chimpanzee, which eats mostly plants, has a massive digestive system. The human's is much smaller. Your gut is also expensive tissue. It takes a lot of energy to run. By shrinking the gut, we freed up even more metabolic energy that could be rerouted to the head. We made an evolutionary trade off a smaller gut for a bigger brain, so the snowball was rolling. Our bipedalism freed the hands. The hands made tools. The tools got us meat. The meat fueled a bigger brain and a smaller gut. This process continued with the next major player, Homo erectus. These guys were a huge step up. They were taller, more like us, and their brains were significantly bigger than Homo habilis. They were also much better toolmakers. They created the iconic Acheulean hand axe, a beautiful, symmetrical, teardrop-shaped tool that they made for over 1,000,000 years. It was the Swiss Army knife of the Stone Age, but Homo erectus had another trick up its sleeve. One that would change the world forever. They learned to control fire. We don't know exactly when or how it happened, but evidence for controlled fire starts appearing around 1.5 million years ago and becomes more common over time. Fire is a game changer for so many reasons. It provides warmth, allowing our ancestors to move into colder climates. It provides protection, keeping predators away at night, but the most important thing fire did was give us cooking. Cooking is one of the most important technologies humans ever invented. It's essentially a form of pre-digestion. When you cook food, especially meat and starchy tubers, you break down the tough fibers and proteins. You make the nutrients much easier for your body to absorb. A cooked meal delivers far more calories to your body than the same meal eaten raw. This was like pouring gasoline on the fire of brain evolution. Suddenly, the energy return from food went through the roof. The expensive tissue trade-off went into overdrive. The gut could shrink even more because cooked food is so easy to digest. All those extra, easily absorbed calories were available for the brain. The brain of Homo erectus grew, and the brains of its descendants like us and the Neanderthals grew even more. Fire did something else too. It changed our social lives. A fire creates a focal point. It creates a day within a night. People would have gathered around the campfire. It was a place for safety, for sharing food, and for social bonding. Instead of everyone going to sleep when it got dark, you now had a few extra hours of social time. This is where communication could have become more complex. It's where stories might have been told. The campfire was the first living room, and living together in a complex social world was about to become the next great driver of our intelligence. Up to this point, the story has been mostly about tools, food, and energy. It's a story of hardware. A bigger brain needs more fuel, and our ancestors found ways to get it. But a big brain is useless unless it has something important to do. What was the big problem that a massive brain needed to solve? The answer, many scientists believe, was other people. This is the social brain hypothesis. The idea is that the primary pressure for developing a complex brain was the challenge of navigating an increasingly complex social world. Living in a group is hard. It's not just about finding food and avoiding predators. It's about cooperating with others. It's about competing with others. It's about keeping track of who is who. Think about a group of our ancestors. You need to know who is your ally and who is your rival. You need to remember who shared food with you last week and who you owe a favor to. You need to know who is trustworthy and who is a cheater. You need to understand the social hierarchy. Who is dominant? Who is submissive? Who is sleeping with whom? Who is plotting against whom? This is an immense computational problem. It's like running a constant, complex simulation in your head. You have to understand not just what another person is doing, but what they are thinking. You have to have a theory of mind, the ability to recognize that others have minds, beliefs, and intentions of their own. You have to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, and you have to be able to predict how they will react to your own actions. This created a kind of cognitive arms race. The individuals who were better at social maneuvering, at making friends, building coalitions, and outsmarting their rivals were more likely to survive and reproduce. Their genes for a better social brain would be passed on, but as everyone in the group gets a little smarter, the social game gets even more complex. You have to be even smarter just to keep up. It's another feedback loop. Social complexity drives the need for a bigger brain. A bigger brain allows for even more social complexity. This is where language comes in. Language is the ultimate social tool. At its most basic, it's for sharing information about the world. There's a lion by the river. The fruit trees over the hill are ripe. That's useful. But it's much more than that. The anthropologist Robin Dunbar has a fascinating theory that language evolved as a replacement for grooming. In primate groups, grooming, picking nits and dirt out of each other's first, is the main way they form social bonds. It's how you make friends and strengthen alliances, but grooming has a big limitation. You can only do it with one individual at a time. As our ancestor groups got bigger, it would have become impossible to spend enough time grooming everyone you needed to maintain a relationship with. Language solves this problem. You can talk to several people at once, and you could talk while you are doing other things like making tools or preparing food. According to Dunbar, a lot of what we talk about is essentially vocal grooming. We call it gossip, we talk about other people, we share information about who is doing what with whom. This is how we keep track of our complex social networks. It's how we enforce social norms and build trust. Language allows us to manage much larger and more complex social groups than any other primate. So the pressure to be a better social operator drove our brains to get bigger and better at communication. We needed more memory to store all the social information. We needed more processing power to run all the social simulations. And we needed a way to share this information. This, according to the social brain hypothesis, is the why behind our massive brains. The need for more food and energy was the how, but the challenges of social life were the why. This brings us to the final act of the play, the emergence of us, Homo sapiens. We appeared in Africa around 300,000 years ago. Our early form had a brain as big as ours. We lived alongside other human species like the Neanderthals in Europe and Asia. For a long time, we were just another clever ape. Our tools were good, but not radically different from what Neanderthals were making. Then, somewhere around 70,000 to 50,000 years ago, something happened. It's often called the Great Leap Forward or the Cognitive Revolution. Suddenly, the evidence of human behavior changes dramatically. We see the first clear signs of art, like the incredible cave paintings in France and Spain. We see elaborate burials with grave goods, which suggests a belief in an afterlife. We see personal ornamentation like shell beads. We see tools made from bone and ivory, not just stone. We see the invention of things like the spear thrower and the bow and arrow. This wasn't a change in body size or brain size. The hardware was already there. This seems to have been a change in the software. Something clicked in the human brain that allowed for a new kind of thinking, symbolic thought. This is the ability to have one thing stand for another. A carving of a horse isn't a horse, but it represents a horse. A word is just a sound, but it represents an idea. This is the foundation of art, religion, and complex language. What caused this shift? We don't know for sure. One theory is that a small genetic mutation caused a final rewiring of the brain. Maybe it perfected our language abilities, allowing for the kind of complex syntax that lets us combine a finite number of words into an infinite number of ideas. The lion chased the man is very different from the man chased the lion. A fully modern language allows us to communicate incredibly precise and novel information. It allows for planning, for storytelling, for creating shared myths and beliefs that can unite huge numbers of people. Another possibility is that it wasn't a sudden genetic event, but a cultural one. Maybe the population reached a certain density where ideas could be shared and built upon more easily, leading to a rapid cascade of innovation. It's probably a mix of both. Whatever the cause, this new way of thinking gave Homo sapiens a decisive edge. We were able to cooperate in larger groups, organized around shared stories and beliefs. We could innovate faster, developing new technologies and strategies. It was this cognitive toolkit that allowed us to spread out of Africa and across the entire planet, outcompeting and replacing all other human species along the way. We were the last hominin standing. But this incredible brain didn't come for free. It has a dark side. It came with a huge price tag, one we are still paying today. The first cost is childbirth. A big brain requires a big head, but walking upright requires a narrow pelvis. This is a terrible engineering conflict. It makes human childbirth uniquely difficult and dangerous compared to other primates. For much of our history, it was a leading cause of death for women. We solved this problem evolutionarily by being born prematurely. A human baby is born with a very underdeveloped brain. It has to do a lot of its growing outside the womb. This leads to the second major cost, a long, helpless childhood. A baby chimp can cling to its mother a few hours after birth. A human baby is a useless lump for years. It takes more than a decade for a human to become self-sufficient. This requires an enormous investment of time and energy from the parents, especially the mother. It fundamentally reshaped our social structure, creating the need for long-term pair bonds and family units to help raise these costly big-brain children. The third cost is the sheer energy drain. As we said, your brain burns 20% of your calories. This means we are constantly on a knife's edge. Starvation is a much bigger threat for us than for an animal with a less demanding brain. Our intelligence is what helps us get those calories, but the need for them is relentless. And finally, there is the psychological cost. A brain that can imagine the future can also imagine all the things that can go wrong in the future. It can invent 1,000 ways to die. This is the root of anxiety. A brain that can remember the past in vivid detail can get stuck replaying its mistakes and failures. This is the root of regret and depression. A brain that is aware of its own existence is also aware of its own mortality. The knowledge that we are going to die is a heavy burden, perhaps unique to our species. Our complex minds make us vulnerable to a whole host of mental illnesses that don't seem to affect other animals in the same way. Our greatest strength is also our greatest weakness. So, to come back to the original question, how did our brains get so complex so suddenly? The answer is that it wasn't really sudden at all. It was a slow, grinding process that took millions of years. It just looks sudden when you look back from the finish line. It wasn't one thing, but a chain reaction of interconnected developments. It started when we stood up, freeing our hands. Our free hands allowed us to make tools. The tools allowed us to get meat. Meat and the later invention of cooking provided the high-quality fuel for a bigger brain. A bigger brain was needed to navigate the increasingly complex social world of our ancestors. The pressures of this social world drove the evolution of language, and language, once it was fully developed, unlocked a new kind of symbolic and cooperative thinking that allowed us to take over the planet. Each step was a feedback loop that amplified the others. Better tools meant better food, which meant bigger brains. Bigger brains meant better tools and also more complex social groups. More complex social groups created pressure for better communication, like language. The language allowed us to share ideas and innovate faster, leading to even better tools and social strategies. It was a snowball rolling downhill for 2 million years. It started small, but by the end it was an avalanche. We are the result of that avalanche. We are a walking, talking, tool-making ape with an oversized, supercharged, and deeply troubled brain. We are still running the same basic hardware and software that was designed for a small group of hunter-gatherers on the African savanna. This Stone Age brain is now trying to navigate a world of smartphones, global markets, and existential threats of our own making. Understanding how this brain came to be is the first step in understanding ourselves and the strange, wonderful, and dangerous predicament we are in. It wasn't sudden. It was a long, slow, and messy process, and it's not over yet.